My name's Chris Adams. I'm a graphic designer, art director, creative director for a couple of different ways. So although technically those are three different titles, they're all the same thing I do. I work for full-time for a company as an art director with a team of 4 designers. I'm also the creative director for a nonprofit where I do a lot of things for ocean conservation stuff and Octonation, which is where we try to get involved and help educate a lot of stuff about the ocean. And I do that through creating unique characters and doing some cool stuff there. Then I also take on freelance jobs. So I do a lot of different illustration. And then I've done a few different animation type of things, which may be closer to what you guys are interested in. In general, I've been in the design industry for a little over 10 years. I went to the Art Institute of Dallas where I got my bachelor's degree there. And then I've been working ever since then. So I've worked in a lot of different design style jobs, from promotional marketing to in-house design, where I spent a lot of my career, but then also doing different digital and print media type of things. So a couple different things, just a quick view into my background there. I'll give you guys some overview of some projects I worked on, but mostly for this type of session in general, I'd rather talk to you about what are you looking for, like what type of stuff or type of questions are you looking for me to answer? Is there anything specific about a career that you want to know more about? And if you have those questions, you can just raise your hand or let me know. I'll start by just going through the list that your teachers provided with the questions there, show you guys some stuff, and then give you a chance to ask some questions. So sound good? Let's see, different jobs. So graphic design, what I like about it in general is that you can kind of choose what path you want to go down. Design as a whole is really cool in that way, where you can kind of start as a general graphic designer, then you can specialize in something else. So my specialty is in branding and logo design, and I spend a lot of time doing Illustrator and that type of area of work. And that's where I kind of started leaning towards ever since then. For some people I know who do a lot of mostly like layout design, and they do a lot of those things where, like, I have a person on my team and she's really good at building stuff very quickly and linking it, doing a lot of stuff, which I find boring. She really likes it because it's very structural and she can get a job done really well. And so it's the same jobs, technically graphic design, just 2 very different skill sets. So in graphic design itself, there's different kind of subsets of stuff you can do, but then also with a graphic design degree, you can work for an in-house agency. All that means is you're working for a company. So like my company right now I work for is called RealPage, which is it's a large multifamily housing type of industry where we do a lot of stuff with technology in that space. Not the most fun type of job that you could say it is. But the good news about in-house is that I have good benefits. I get paid well. I have good flexibility. So there's a lot of those things that really help me out for why I like that job. You could go work ad agency, which is more traditional style doing things where you get to work on some of the different types of ads that you may see on TV or YouTube or whatever else you watch. The plus and minuses there, just depending on how much freedom you want, how much pay you want, how much notoriety you want. I think that's a small piece that kind of like it seems small, but maybe it's not. I always wanted to make a design that I could win awards with. Doing that at an in-house agency is like really difficult because most people don't really care about trying to put designs up for awards, versus if you work for an ad agency, that's a big part of what they do, because in that sales process of pitching themselves to other clients, they get to say, we won X amount of awards, or our campaign last year ran at the Super Bowl or whatever else, that type of thing. So a couple of differences there. You could also go work for just like a promotional marketing shop where I worked at for a while, where I just helped make t-shirts and things. That was a part of that. So that was a small part of my career there. That could be a whole part of your career, depending if that's something you want to do. And, graphic design also touches packaging. So sometimes it'll be at an agency, sometimes it'll be at an in-house place as well. So if you want to focus on making packages for things. So if you've seen it, it's been designed by some sort of designer, whether that's graphic design as a whole, or whether that's a subset of a package designer or a branding web designer, that type of thing. You can get into web. There's a guy on our team that started graphic design, transitioned into web design, or you can just go straight into web design. You guys are coming up in the age where like everything is digital, especially in the post-COVID era, where we have to have all of this stuff available via digital interactions. And so things like a user interface designer or UX designer that we didn't really have a career like that when I was going to school. It wasn't a thing, versus now there's some of the highest paid jobs in a lot of places where people need that stuff. Is you've got 4 user experience designers that sit down all day and write stuff on paper about how people are going to be using your product. And it's really important work, and it's a lot of research, and it really has a huge impact on stuff. So like Meta, Facebook has a lot of UX designers. So does Instagram, so does any app, TikTok or anything else, right? They have people that are designing the experience that you work in. It's kind of connected to graphic design, but also very different. But you can transition into it. So there's a lot of different ways you can go, I guess is what I'm saying. There was a lot there. So I touched on it a little bit. Graphic designers can do anything from PowerPoint documents to branding stuff for website design, to creating new logos for new companies, to merchandising design, like to packaging, anything like that. I can show you some stuff that I've done as far as like what we're doing. Let me go here. So this is just a small set of some of my design work that I've done as far as like what you can do as a graphic designer. This is a logo design, basically a refresh for a small studio here in Richardson. They actually had a logo they wanted to kind of make a little bit more modern and clean it up, make it more minimal. So this is kind of the finished result. And this just walked you through the process of what they wanted, how we built it. And then also did some mock-ups for what their website could look like, different ways you can use the color palettes we created, and then just a little bit of like design for the footer, showing that, again, just usage of the new brand, how you can put it on some things. So that's like one thing you could do. There's also different things. Like this is a little bit a mixture of a lot of different things. So I actually designed this kind of whole experience from scratch. And so this involves user experience, user interface design. It also has some animation work in it, and then your standard graphic design work. So a lot of times when you're building something like this, if you're doing it somewhere else, it would be a larger team of a lot of people. I had to do all of this on my own with one boss who was helping me, and he wasn't a designer. He was a strategist guy. So this was a cool opportunity that I had just in my career where I got to build something from scratch, and then also how to figure out how to make it work. So we built this. You can see these are the not so fun to look at, but these are wireframes of how would this experience work, and had to figure out all the different places things were going to go, as well as also figure out how we're going to intake the content. I don't want to bore you with all the details of this, but this was a really big project that took on a lot of work, but it touched a lot of different things. I won't play this for you right now just because videos playing over Zoom do not translate well, and it's not really a good experience for you. If you wanted to look at this, this is just my website with the content channels on here. But I built this, it connects to YouTube here. You can see that, but this is just a quick video that I made to kind of walk people through things. And so it'll just walk you through the experience. So that's part of what animation can do. Sometimes you can build stuff where you have motion graphics for ads and things. And sometimes you're also doing like the different video walkthroughs of how to use something. This is a little bit older. I'm sure we could make this better pretty quickly if I wanted to. But it was a cool part of the experience of being able to kind of touch on graphic design, UX, UI, and animation all at the same time, as well as also content strategy and kind of problem solving there. So graphic design and a lot of things is just, it's visual problem solving is really a way to look at it that way. People are going to come to you and ask a question, or I want this, and you have to help them figure out how to get that in a way that makes sense, looks good, is going to last, it's going to have that appeal. And sometimes that's a lot easier than it is in some other ones. This was a different promotional campaign I got to do. So I spent a lot of time doing vector illustration and doing some illustration on my own as well. And we had a campaign that we ran for this event company where we made these different designs and stickers for different national holidays. And then we would go out and actually give away those different items and stuff to reach new customers and go meet people at hotels and do some of that. And so it was a way for us to build a campaign around doing something, but also having a unique visual aid that we could kind of go with it. So the brand colors were this purple, green, and red. So we're going to pull those pieces in there. And then for some reason, she wanted a vinyl record day, even though it's not really the same thing as everything else. But it was still fun to kind of make this like retro style badges of illustration stuff. So different side of graphic design, doing some more illustrative work if you like that. What's cool about these, when you guys are talking about animation and stuff, when you make vector illustrations like this, you can actually do some really cool animations inside After Effects by kind of taking them apart and building it. So like having the popcorn pop or like roll the record around. There's actually really cool ways you can do it with HTML5 now these days as well. I am not a web designer, so definitely not something I could do. But that's when I look at this stuff and I'm building these designs, I think, all right, how could someone take what I'm making and make a better version of it? Like, what could they do with that? And so trying to make sure I'm building it in the right amount of pieces, using the right type of font work, all that type of stuff. So that's where design usually isn't a solo job, even though sometimes you'll get to like this other project work and I get to do all myself. Usually you're on a team of people, and especially on how you're implementing it is a big part of that. Are you doing it on web, doing it on video? You know, how are you going to build that stuff out so that you can have this experience that's, when it's finished, is the best kind of way it can be there. Okay, so I'm gonna go back to these questions here. Education. You could have anything from an associate's to a bachelor's. You can go to a trade school. You can go to a four-year school. You could get an internship right out of high school. Graphic design and just design in general, your portfolio is your most important thing. So if you can show me proof that you know how to do the work, your education level doesn't really matter as much to me. Like when I go interview people for jobs now, you know, I'm looking for, do they have at least 5 years of experience and is their portfolio good? I don't think I've ever looked at what their education level was. I think I've got 2 people on my team right now who've never gone to college, and I've got 3 other people who have. It just depends on what you want to do and how much of a self-starter you are. I would have never been able to jump into design without going to college because I am a serial procrastinator and I like to play video games too much. So I would have probably just sat at home and played a lot of video games and drawn a lot of stuff and never really started a career. So I needed college just for my personal sanity. But maybe that is or isn't something you want to do there or how you want to get there. So there's definitely education you need. I will say that there is a difference in someone who's been trained in how to use stuff and then someone who's learned it on their own. The biggest thing is that you just pick stuff up quicker. And it's also easier to get you introduced into a team of people. But as long as you have the right attitude about wanting to learn and putting yourself in a position where if you get a job, you're willing to kind of get in with there, you'll be fine. You just have to have the want to. I think that's the big piece. Skills, basic design skills are going to be there. I think you're going to learn all the tools. So Photoshop, Illustrator, whatever, it's Animate or whatever you're using these days, Photoshop or the Adobe Suite is a pretty universal thing that a lot of designers are using. So as a tool, I would say those are there. Skills would be, like I said, creative problem solving. Knowing the basics of design principles is a really big thing that I find myself of when people kind of like what's the biggest thing that I critique all the time with my team is it's do the basic stuff right. Get your layouts right, get your contrast right, get your fonts right, like get all the stuff that your first beginning graphic design classes were about is the same thing that you'll be harping on in 10 years. If you get that right every time, then you can focus on how to make it cool. But that's really like that skill set of getting just design principles correct and getting it correct every time. That's a big part of what to be a successful designer. Other pieces are going to be like negotiating with clients, trying to get them to understand that their idea is probably bad and you have to find a way to make it good. But you get into what they refer to as the lipstick on a pig scenario of I can make it pretty, but it's still a pig. Like it's not going to be a good idea. So how can we circumvent to actually have a good idea and then make something great from that? That skill of that communication with clients is incredibly hard to learn, but it's also incredibly important. So that's small piece is what they refer to being a fly on the wall in the room with people. Like get in there and listen to how people are talking to each other, get involved with different people and start having those conversations early. If you've all ever had to argue with your parents, I'm not saying do that, but the negotiation skills that you have that you're learning when you're trying to get something from them that they don't want to give you, those skills will help you in life later. You just have to learn how to do it the right way, right? So how can you have a conversation that isn't just an argument, but you're trying to help solve a problem, it's all about negotiating. You're going to have to find a way to do that for a lot of I just had a branding client that I worked with that had this idea. It's like, this is going to be bad and it's going to cause us to do a lot of rework. And we had to figure out, how do we get past that? But you can't just tell someone their idea is dumb or it's not going to work, right? Like you're not going to get that client. And so you have to find a way to really communicate with them. So communication is really key, and basic design principles are like the two main things I would say you definitely need. What are the things you love about your job? I love the freedom I have, which I think is really nice. I can do stuff like this, where I can volunteer and speak to classrooms. I can walk my son to school in the morning. My schedule is very flexible. Design in general is like that, depending on where you go, of course, and what job you have. But in general, like, we can work from anywhere. I could be in Thailand and I could do the exact same job I'm doing today, and it wouldn't matter. The only thing that would be inconvenient is the time difference. But actually doing my job, I just need a computer and I can go anywhere. Same thing for illustration. So I do illustrative work. I've got an iPad where I've done some digital work. I do pen and paper. So I could take one backpack of 4 things and do my job anywhere I go. And to me, in general, about design, I love it. It's, you can do your thing. You're not tied down by having to go into an office or like work manual labor to do something. Although, I mean, if you're drawing, you're using your hands, of course, but it's very flexible. Kind of what I was talking about before is that design also allows you to figure out, what do you like about design? Maybe you're interested in it because you wanted to design sneakers, or maybe you wanted to animate cool videos because you saw something on TikTok and you're like, that's really cool, I'm going to make some of that. And you'll kind of get into that and you'll find out pretty quickly, like, yes, I really want to do that. And I'm going to keep kind of like, just stay hungry for that type of design and keep going for it. Or you'll find out that you don't. I thought for sure I was going to design t-shirts forever, which I don't. I did that for maybe a year, probably. It wasn't for me. It's funny because I did that. Now I make my own merch, but not in the same area of which, like, working for someone else. That's another thing with design too. If you get good enough and build up your own client base, you can work for yourself. You don't have to have a boss. It's a lot harder because you got to do taxes and you got to find clients. And if a client doesn't pay, you can't pay your bills. So there's a lot of that side of things. But if you get to the point where you've built up a good client base, you've got recurring people on what they refer to as like a retainer, where they're just paying you monthly to have you around, like, you can kind of make your own rules. For me, that was a big thing. I was a really terrible student in school. I didn't like people telling me what to do. I was a terrible student in college, same thing. So being able to kind of make my own rules about what works for me and still getting the job done, it's a really cool industry that way. You can kind of do that. As long as you show up, your job gets done well, and you're respectful and you kind of do that whole thing, people will give you more freedom. So I love that. And that's what I think is really great about graphic design. What inspired me? It's funny. I thought I was going to be an art director or an architect for a long time. And I really wanted to design buildings. I liked building design. And I realized it was a lot of school, a lot of math, and a lot of people telling me what to do. And that was like all things that I didn't want in my life. And so I actually had a class similar to what you're in, where the Art Institute actually came to my school, and we had this like poster design competition for Photoshop. And I actually ended up, I think, getting like second place, which made me mad because, like I said before, I was a bad student. I kind of phoned a lot of stuff in. I was like, man, if I had tried, I probably could have won. And so then I was just kicking myself the whole time for not doing that. But I got enough money from that to actually go to school, definitely not to pay for it, but enough to say like, hey, by the way, you're not getting free money to any other school. Might as well try this thing out. And then it was also just the idea of, I was maybe 17 at the time. So I think I graduated at 17 because I had late birthday, but it was still late or it was early in my senior year. And it was just the idea of like, hey, you can actually get paid to do this thing that you're doing in Photoshop class that you actually think is fun. And so that was a big difference for me. Before that, never knew that graphic design was even a career or a job or existed at all. I didn't really I grew up in a smaller town and some of that. And so to be in an area where you're like, oh, like that's a real thing and you can get paid for it, that was huge for me. So that's where that kind of came from of, again, I can get paid to do something I enjoy. So that was very interesting. If anybody has